All right. Hello. How is everybody? Tobin here. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, if you're not, please subscribe and you'll get updated on everything I'm doing here at the Jungle Temple in Costa Rica, from growing plants, propagating fruit trees, discussing local hacks and things that I've learned so that you can benefit in your experiences both visiting Costa Rica and potentially moving here. And also just anecdotes of people I've met and unique individuals and groups in the population that you should become accustomed to knowing about. Not necessarily in bad ways, in good ways, and just general ways. It's for adaptation to the culture. If you're from another country, these are things you're going to experience that you might not have experienced in your home country or places you've traveled before. But also, I share these because there's opportunities that lie just beneath the surface. So if you're a business person, or if you're an anthropologist, or if you're an archaeologist, there's so many vast things that I discuss here as far as the characters. You're going to meet very unique people or encounter very unique people. You might not even meet them, you might just encounter them in public, who are going to teach you a lot about not only the culture here, but the history here, and also potentially where the future could go. And that's kind of what I'm discussing today, is things that are historically kind of cultural Costa Rican things, specifically in farmland areas, but also a possibility for the future for anybody that's in medical technology or biotech and things like that, which is actually, I was just looking at the statistics of the past couple years for businesses in Costa Rica and exports specifically, and the economy has risen, or grown I should say, by 30% between 2022 and 2023, which is amazing for any country, but specifically I'm very grateful that it's this country I call home now. And the number 2 export for Costa Rica is medical devices, actually, which is very interesting. The medicine here is fantastic, and people actually come here for medical tourism from all over the planet, and dental tourism, because the prices are very low and the quality is very high, because a lot of Costa Ricans will go to their postgraduate studies in the United States or in elite schools in Europe, and then come back here and bring that knowledge to the population, which is great. And it's a socialized healthcare system, so this isn't just offered to the elites, it's offered to everybody, and it's a big business here. And now some of this industry is developing medical technology to export to the world. Being the world's leading experts in medicine, it just makes sense. So that said, this video is to explain a population of people that you're going to encounter when you're here, and I'm going to explain why these people are in the conditions they're in. And at the same time, it's going to provide anybody who's watching this that might have a career or a degree or experience in medical technology to literally have a great opportunity here. And let me just reference that for a moment. When I was preparing to leave the United States and kind of closing the doors on a lot of the things I had been doing up there, it was very important to me to come full circle and help rehab spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries, something that I had gone through at 18 years old. And the only reason I am able to be here physically acting and verbally speaking the way I do now is because I had really, really good nurses, physical therapists, athletic trainers around me who helped rehab me from the state that orthopedic surgeons were telling me I should never walk again, I should never play sports again, which is obviously not something you tell to an 18-year-old in any situation. But thank God I had good people who had knowledge and experience in getting people back like me to bring me back. So that's why I want to kind of pay it forward a little bit with this video, in hopes that somebody out there sees this and wants to build a business in Costa Rica and not just export medical devices, but to help the local population with them. To my point, Characters of Costa Rica episode today is about the one-legged person population here in Costa Rica, which is actually quite prevalent, especially in a town like Parita. You're going to drive through or pass through, go to a restaurant or a cafe in central Parita, and you're going to see several people with one leg. Very rarely do they have prosthesis, and even when they do, It's very antiquated. It's still just, it's not like the blades, or it's not anything that, is helping them improve their walking. It's basically just a modern peg leg like you would see in a pirate back, in the 1700s or 1800s in that imagery. It's essentially just an insertion piece for whatever part of their knee was amputated, and then just like a little metal rod with, a flex step that you would probably put on the bottom of a ladder. To be honest with you, that's about as far as I've seen technologically. Whereas in the United States and areas of Europe, and you go to Sweden and countries like this, they're at the forefront of not only prosthetics, but also robotics and integrating AI, and now Neuralink is integrating a chip in someone's brain to communicate with a robotic unit, and that's bringing them back to almost full mobility with no imbalances and no issues caused on other joints as a result, which you don't get here yet. But let me explain from what I've learned in the past 3-4 years of how these people got into this situation in the first place, which is very pertinent, especially if you're in an Airbnb or you're buying a house that's not close to a health clinic, or in Red Cross in which you can get an ambulance, or if you don't have a vehicle that can transport you to an emergency medical center if you get in an issue. I would say the primary reason people are having their legs amputated so often here is venomous snake bites, or the terciopelo or the fer de lance. Typically, there are numerous, I would guess probably somewhere around a dozen venomous snakes in this country. But specifically where I live in Parita, where there are monoculture crop fields like papaya fields, or watermelon fields, or the palm oil fields, you're going to get, or teak farms, you're going to get terciopelos or fer de lance. I've had one a year typically on my property come in. Thankfully, just as a baby. I've once had one a little bigger, but people are posting videos and photos all the time from surrounding farms of larger ones. And thank God, I'm going to knock on this wood table, that I don't get those, or I haven't had those here yet. But even the little ones can be extra dangerous because they don't know how to control their venom yet. So a lot of people will be out walking barefoot or walking in sandals, going to the local rivers, going even to beaches, or just walking around their fincas or quintas, their farms, and they'll get bit by a terciopelo, and immediately that starts causing necrosis. And a lot of the time, when they go to the emergency medical care, it makes sense to amputate so that infection does not get the person who's been bitten's heart, or cause a greater infection as far as necrotic activity, which is basically just the muscle and bone tissue being eaten away by the venom. So you'll see a lot of individuals with one leg, and I don't know the exact percentage, but I would say 9 times out of 10 it's because they were bit by a terciopelo and they were not close enough to get to a medical center within 15-20 minutes. And as that time goes longer, that foot bite or toe bite or ankle bite that happened is going to start to move up the leg. It's going to eventually move up, to the hips and abdomen and midsection, and hopefully it doesn't get to your heart, because at that point you're probably dead. So the best technique that they use here is an amputation. Yeah, you can do anti-venom, but depending on where that blood infection has gotten to at that point, which it moves fast, from what I've heard, if you don't get to a medical center within an hour from a terciopelo bite or a fer de lance bite, you're dead. So as soon as someone gets there, they're probably amputating the leg just to stop the spread of it, and then they treat the person with whatever anti-venom that they may have available. Also, infections. I was bitten by just a general spider on long grass, and I didn't come in and wash it off right away, and I started scratching it with dirty fingers or gloves or whatever, and an hour later, it was my first year here, so I wasn't even thinking about this stuff. I just went inside, and I was exhausted from the sun, and it knocked me out. I had a little bit of sunstroke maybe, and I just passed out for a few hours. A few hours later, I wake up, and then I take a shower, and I realize on my shin there's some swelling and there's some infection, and I'm like, all right, it's going to be fine. The next day I wake up, and it's huge, and it's swollen, and you can barely see my calf muscle anymore. So I'm starting to get nervous. But didn't really know what to do, so I just, put some alcohol on the direct wound, and then I, would put some cream on it or whatever, and some ice on it for the swelling. Well, that night, this is now a day and a half, 2 days after, I couldn't sleep because my bone was aching so much, and I knew something was wrong. Thankfully, that was then a Tuesday night. On Wednesday morning, the health clinic in my neighborhood opens up, and I go over there first thing in the morning, and I ask the doctor, hey, like, what's going on here? And she asked what happens, and she said, you have an infection. It's probably a bone infection by now. Go get these antibiotics. And that's how great medicine is here. She didn't charge me for the appointment. I went to town right away on the afternoon bus, and I got the antibiotics at the pharmacy. It cost me less than $10, I think. I took a week of antibiotics, and it was fine. But I'll show you here. Let's see if I can get my leg up. I don't know if you can see. On my shin, there is a dent, like a hole. It looks like a bullet wound. There is no flesh there. There's no muscle anymore. I can touch that pretty much right down to my bone, or the little bit of fascia that sits on top of the bone. But where there's normally like that shin muscle, it's not there anymore. There's just a hole. And that was much bigger when I first was treating it, and it was bad. Like, I could have lost my leg from an infection within 3 days of it occurring. So things metabolize or metastasize much quicker here in Costa Rica in the jungle than they would anywhere else in a colder climate. So be aware. Do not wind up being one of these one-legged person population people if you don't have to. These are your warnings. There's many other things, obviously if you're using a weed whacker with the blade and not the strings, and you're not wearing any type of shin guards or something and it comes loose, that could smack you. There's all these circumstantial stuff, right? Little things, but mostly it's the terciopellos or the venomous snakes that you have to be aware of, the grass crawlers, not necessarily the tree hangers, and then infections, and just beware. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because the other night, on a Thursday night, I was over in Bayuco and Esterios of Purita, and I went to a resort over there on the beach, and they had a happy hour on a Thursday night. It was a fun time, a lot of people there, a lot of tourists, had some friends there, met some new friends, and a miscommunication happened, and all my potential rides left without me, so now I'm stuck like 20 kilometers from my house, and I've walked grand distances before, and it's nighttime, so I'm starting to contemplate, man, maybe I'm gonna have to walk if nobody's able to come get me, and nobody's available because it's the holiday week. Like, I called a few of my friends and they weren't available. A friend who was a kind of cab driver wasn't available. So I'm thinking, all right, my option now is I just have to trek this home, and if I could hitchhike for a little bit of it, great, but if not, I've got like 20-25 kilometers I'm gonna walk that. Might take me 3-4 hours to do, depending on, if I want to jog some of it or if I just want to cruise it out. And a fair amount of it was along the highway, so I'm like, oh man, this can be kind of dangerous. People are drinking and driving for the holiday weeks, and roads here in Costa Rica are not too big, so I got to be extra careful. And I was just counting my blessings, like, oh my God, could you imagine if I had the same scenario and I had lost my leg and I was either on crutches, like you see a lot of people in town, or I had a very rudimentary prosthetic that I was walking on, and like how much longer it would take me and how impossible it would be. And I started counting my blessings, like, thank you God, thank you universe for allowing me to keep my legs and to have the ability to walk, and for being on top of things right away. And so I wound up, a new friend, I made a set of new friends, and they invited me to stay back at their resort down the street when they saw me walking down the street, and I wound up sleeping on a couch outside, and it was beautiful to, once again hear the ocean crashing as I was sleeping, and they were such good people, and I woke up to breakfast, and even before I went to sleep, the husband, the gentleman, brings me out like a peanut butter sandwich and a glass of water, and just really good, kind people, which now whom I consider friends now. My Jazzy's just running around the property. You can see her tail bouncing there, my wild girl. And so anyway, I got very lucky in that whole scenario, but the next day I went to town, and I was meeting with another friend and just having some lunch and breakfast in Central Purita, and I wind up seeing like 3 of these amputees, just thinking, man, like, how much their life would have changed if they had watched a video like this before. And I realized I've never seen a video like this before on YouTube. So hopefully this is a warning to a lot of other people about some of these things that could happen, and you don't want to be part of that one-legged person's population. But the other reason, as I said in the beginning, that I'm saying this is hopefully this will bring awareness to this and not just act as a preventative thing, but also as an opportunity for somebody who might want to get into this business here in Costa Rica. Here's a great opportunity to start a corporation and either start importing some of the world's best robotics appendages and prosthetics, and you'll have a huge market here in Costa Rica, because unfortunately, based on the nature of this video, this is a prevailing problem that's probably been going on since ancient times, that with a little modern medicine it's leading to a lot less deaths, but as a result more amputees. And then beyond the amputation, there's not really a lot of service that could be offered to this population, because I haven't seen and I haven't heard of an orthopedic or a prosthetic company that's offering robotics or offering state-of-the-art technology like we have in the United States, like those blades where people can continue to run, or you can have a leg that's good for golfing, and you can have a leg that's good for water skiing or snowboarding, which is offered to a lot of people in the United States, post-military, wounded warriors, and things like that. But here in Costa Rica, that's just not an option yet. So if you're an entrepreneur, or if you work in this industry of biotechnology, here's your opportunity. Come to Costa Rica, start a corporation, hire locals, teach them how to fit people, how to do the molds, how to train people, get physical therapists that are trained in Costa Rica who can work in transitioning these people from amputation stage to working with their prosthetics full-time functionally. And because of the medical system here, I have a feeling you will get a lot of grants, and you will have a lot of interconnectivity with the government and with the university hospitals. I think it's UCR, the University of Costa Rica, their medical branches, their rehab branches. This is a great opportunity for anybody watching this, or if you have anybody that's watching this has friends or family that work in the industry, you have opportunity in Costa Rica, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. So the country itself, the government is investing in these technologies. They're just not necessarily spreading them around to the population, because they're benefiting more on exporting them to other countries that will pay higher. But like I said, this is like any other country, especially any other forward-thinking country that offers grants to companies to get started on things like this to help the population. So here's an opportunity, but also a warning. So Characters of Costa Rica, next episode, guys. Thank you for tuning in.